Let's see. Okay, good. Francesca's coming. All right. So can you all see the slideshow? I can see you, yes, nodding. Okay, thank you, Tony. I appreciate that. Okay, great. So once again, I'm Allison Scola. I'm the owner and curator of Experience Sicily. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about Experience Sicily as we go forwards. But I am in love with Sicily. So here we are sharing it with you. I do have some questions for you tonight. I'm going to run a poll. The first question in the poll is, have you been to Sicily? And if you have, here you go. You can answer on your screen, yes or no, to give me an idea of who we have on the call tonight. And I'm always curious to know how many of you have been to Sicily. And of course, the next question is going to be, when do you want to travel to Sicily? So get your answer ready for that. I'll be doing that in a minute. So 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, we're ending the polling. Many of you have been to Sicily. 62% of you have been to Sicily before. So that is great and wonderful, because we are really getting into details tonight. This is stuff that most people who have not been to Sicily will not see if they go for the first time, but certainly those of you who've been or going for another time, you know, you'll be curious to see some of these things the second or third visit. So the next question on our next poll is, when do you plan to travel to Sicily? Let's see if I can bring that one up here. Okay, good. So here you can answer, I think, just one of these, but the question is, when would you like to travel to Sicily? I know right now I want to go, but obviously we can't go yet. But Roberto, like he said, one of our guests tonight, he's saying that
yes,
yes, certainly it's going to be possible in the fall. So that's what I'm counting on. And we have a stunning Sicily tour, 2 weeks in Sicily, all over the island in the fall of 2021. So we have reserved everything and we are waiting for the border to open. So I'm curious to hear when you would like to go. And we do have an Easter trip also that I'm going to be announcing the details of it. The dates are up, but the details of the day-to-day, I'm going to be doing that in the next week. I was getting this one ready here. So, okay, so I'm going to end the polling. 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, and so I'll share the results. So, wow, I'm amazed. Fall 2021, people are really anxious to go. So let's hope. 32% for fall 2021 sounds good to me. And then, of course, many of you also say that you hope to go in 2023 or in the future. So that's fantastic. I am thrilled to see these results. So next year too, obviously 2022 is going to be very popular, and we're preparing for you. So it's very exciting. And I know my colleagues are ready for us. Okay, so going forwards here, back to our presentation. So thanks so much for participating in the polling. So once again, I'm a small group tour operator. We do custom creative itineraries for independent travelers. We also will plan small group tours for you and lead them so that you can enjoy your vacation with your loved ones and family. So between our small group tours that I have scheduled departures for, your custom tours, or if you want to go with your friends and family on your own, we'll I do an itinerary for you. We also do heritage research and experiences in your town or your village of origin. Professional consultation on an itinerary that you want to plan and book. You want those extra special tips, I will give them to you. We'll do that for consultation. Cannoli Crawl walking tour in New York City, which I'm starting up again this Saturday, May 15th, will be our first one back after COVID, and we have another one June 5th coming up. And then more stateside gatherings to be announced and online inspired, Sicily inspired events like this one tonight. So thank you so much for tuning in. Here I am in this is Capo Zafferano. Here is my cousin and partner in Experience Sicily, Evelina Butita, and we are inviting you to come to Sicily. So let's hope we're going to be there in October. So once again, Cannoli Crawl will be this Saturday coming up for the first time since the lockdown that last year, and we'll have another one June 5th. So come on into New York City, and New York City is alive and well. Maybe not Midtown, but certainly where we go on the Cannoli Crawl, and it's going to be great. We have some new vendors we're incorporating, and the food is fantastic and the history is fantastic to learn. It's a great bridge to Sicily. Next Thursday, I'm doing Dream of Travel to Sicily office hours. So if you have your questions about travel, we are going to do a huge Q&A next Thursday evening after I do a short presentation about traveling in Sicily. So please join me for that. That is a complimentary event. And then Sicily Inspired Yoga with Cleo Mallon next Friday evening at 5:30, also on Zoom. And that's also like tonight, $1 or sliding scale as you wish. So I hope that you'll join us because Cleo is hosting the Yoga in Sicily tour we're doing next year in June. So it would be great for you to meet her during that event. So here we are, without further ado, the Myths and Mysteries of Sicily, Eastern Sicily Part 1. Now, this is Eastern Sicily Part 1 because there probably will be a Part 2 and a Part 3 maybe. There's a lot to cover on this topic, and I am writing a book about Sicily and these exact things we're talking about tonight. So as I'm doing research and putting things together, I'm going to be, you know, working on these things and showing them to you. Okay, so I will send you yoga information. Absolutely happy to do that. So let's see. So tonight I'm going to be talking about the deities, the pre-Christian deities in Sicily and the whole Mediterranean, really. Sicilian history to give you an idea of where those deities fall into things and where we are going to be on the map is very important. And also, so we'll travel through some of the sites that you can connect with these deities. And of course, we'll do a Q&A at the end. So here we are. Please also type your stuff into the chat if you have them. I won't be able to necessarily answer them right away, but if you don't want to forget your question, by all means, type them into the chat and I'll look at it either during the Q&A or after the event is over tonight and get back to you, because there's a lot of ground to cover. So I'm going to move pretty quickly through this because I really want to take you on a tour. So again, this is a little bit of an esoteric tour of Sicily, but I think it's a neat way to see Sicily from your computer, let's say. So here we are, Sicily in the middle of the Mediterranean. It's the largest island in the Mediterranean. And here it is. As we know, it's an ancient island. And so before the human history that we're most familiar with, which starts about 3,000 years ago, Sicily was occupied by three different peoples, let's say. We call them the Elemi, which are in the West, and we're not going to be talking much about the West tonight at all because that is another lecture. But we will be talking about the Sicani in the center a little bit, and the Sicels or the Siculi on the eastern side of Sicily a lot. So the Sicani, we think came from, they're probably the most indigenous people of Sicily, and we think they came from, perhaps they came from the Spanish Peninsula, perhaps they came from North Africa. It's probably a combination of both or all three. And same with the Sicels, the Siculi. Sicels and Siculi are the same thing. It depends on which language you're speaking. And those peoples came probably from the Italic Peninsula. And again, they're really an ancient habitats of Sicily, or inhabitants of Sicily rather. Okay, so that gives you an idea of how the island was split up in ancient times. And even today, you will hear people in Agrigento refer to themselves as Sicani. And so I'm actually doing a lot of this heritage and ancestral work right now. And so I'm Sicano, Sicana, because of where my family is from in Palermo area. So back to the map. So we know, obviously, we're going to be talking a lot tonight about Greece. And the deities that we're going to be dealing with are mostly Greece because we're dealing with Eastern Sicily. So most of what Eastern Sicily's influence is comes from Greece. And as you can see, it's quite easy to travel right across the Ionian Sea to the eastern coast of Sicily. And then we have the western side of Sicily, which again, we're not going to talk too much about tonight, but the western part of Sicily is Phoenician, Carthaginian. Modern day Tunisia is where Carthage was. And so those people came originally from where Lebanon is, Israel is, that whole area of the Mediterranean, and then moved west and really populated Western Sicily. So again, that's more Western Sicily presentation, but to give you an idea, Sicily really was split down the middle. And we're going to talk a lot about that because the East is Greek for sure, and the West has a very North African and again, Carthaginian influence. So here you have in ancient times, you can see how Sicily, the map was, ancient Carthage was huge, very influential. We don't know much about it because the Romans make sure that they destroyed everything we could possibly learn about the Carthaginians. It's a very sad fact. We do know some things because we've been able to find some evidence of them, especially in Tunisia. However, they made a point to really obliterate all knowledge of Carthaginians. They were quite advanced, quite technologically advanced people, excellent mariners. But in contrast to them, Carthaginians and the Greeks often were at odds with each other. And if you, as you can see here on the right side, where ancient Greece was in this dark orange color, it was also a massive empire, and it all around the coastline and easy where you could access obviously through the sea. So we're going to start our journey tonight in southeastern Sicily in the Monte Ibla, or the Iblean Mountains. And I want you to look at how this really is centered in Sicily in terms of this area, the southeastern point of Sicily here. The Iblean Mountains are really present, and they're really made of limestone. And the thing that's interesting about them too is that the Sicily is actually on two of the tectonic plates, the European plate, and part of it, which is this area, the Iblean Mountains, is on the African plate. So it's a shelf of limestone, and that really has a lot to do with the history. The limestone dictates a lot. So speaking of history, let's go back and place everything for ourselves, a little somewhat of a review of what I've just said, but really give us an idea of where we are in our history of Sicily. So pre-Greek, pre-Phoenician peoples, we're talking about 1200 before Common Era. We have the Elami, the Sicani, and the Siculi. In about 775 before Common Era, the Phoenicians came. They became Carthaginian. So imagine the Brits came to the United States, or they came to North America rather. They became Canadian, they became American. So that's what happens with the Phoenicians. They become Carthaginian. Carthage is very, very powerful. And alongside the Greeks, it grows as a power. The Greeks came in 735 BCE, and this again is really important for our discussion tonight. So we're really in this area of 735 BCE until Rome takes over. And this is after, you know, you hear about the Peloponnesian Wars and you hear about the Punic Wars. That all was going on in this time frame. And in 264, the Romans finally conquered the Carthaginians in Western Sicily, and then the Greeks basically gave up because they realized that they had nothing to protect them from Rome any longer. And so what happens at this point is, I want you to really pay attention, think about this. So it's 735 years before Common Era is Greek, and the Romans are really in power until about 400 Common Era. So the deities we're talking about, they span from pre-Greek even, okay, through to 400 Common Era. This is like 2,000 years we're talking about in terms of how long some of these deities were worshipped. And so it's not, I don't want it to fall on you too lightly how significant what we call the mysteries, the cults, the mystery cults, these deities were. Christianity has minimized the importance of these for obvious reasons. So we call them legends, we call them myths. And yes, there are stories, certainly, but they were stories that people lived by, just as people do with Christianity and Judaism today and Islam today. So etc. So think of it like that. And then what I want to fast forward to, because there's a lot of confusion of Christianity, the Vandals, the Goths, the Ostrogoths come in, the Byzantines are, of course, are from the Eastern Mediterranean, and they ruled Sicily. So there was a very real Byzantine sense of religion in Sicily during this period until the Arabs come. And then the Normans arrive, and the Normans begin this beautiful period of Sicilian, it's a renaissance in Sicily actually, starting in around 1060. So this is important because imagine all the confusion of what religion is and what spirituality is leading up to the Normans' conquest of Sicily. And the Normans take it upon themselves to really Christianize Sicily. And we're going to get to that towards the end of the lecture tonight, and how they start doing that. All right, so now you have a picture of what the history of Sicily looks like. All right, so modern day Sicily looks like this. You probably heard of Taormina, you've heard of Mount Etna, right? They're up here in northeastern Sicily. We're not going to talk too much about these areas tonight, actually. We're really going to spend a lot of time in Siracusa, Ragusa area, and a little bit in this area north of Ragusa and Enna, which is in the center. I don't have it on the map here, but essentially it's right under where I am pointing right now, under the Sicily word. So we're really focused on southeastern Sicily tonight. Okay, so we've got the sacred and divine feminine deities. That's really what my topic is about, because pre-Christian times, the feminine deities really ruled Sicily. We have a lot of Dionysus too, and that comes out in Western Sicily specifically too, when we're talking about Saint Joseph. Again, that's another lecture, but you'll find that in Eastern Sicily, especially, it's a lot of goddesses. And so we're going to talk about them. So here we are. Again, here's our map, and we're going to start in Ragusa Ibla, which is really sort of the center of culture in the Iblean Mountains, which again are here. And that's important because the Iblean Mountains were occupied because they were limestone and you could cut caves into them. So people lived in caves until the 1950s in this area. And in fact, here we're looking at beautiful Ragusa Ibla, which is on a hilltop here. This is the ancient part of Ragusa, which is basically where most people will visit when they visit Ragusa. You know, if you are in some of these homes that are here, you can go into the cave that might be in this house. So people talk a lot about you know, Basilicata and the caves there, right? Because oh my goodness, I'm losing my mind. I can't think of the city that was the capital of European culture last year, but caves are always talked about there, Basilicata. But of course, Modica, Ragusa, Noto, these people had caves they lived in too. Yes, someone's probably telling me what town it is because I can't remember. My brain is, yes, Matera. Grazie mille. Of course. Thank you. Okay, I knew someone would come through for me. All right, so we are in Ibla, like I was saying. Ibla or Ibla or Iblea is, this word is spelt many ways. In modern Italian, it's Ibla. And it was a goddess, Ibla. She was a goddess, and Ragusa Ibla is named for her. Okay, so meanwhile, this again is the Siculi area, and she was a Siculian goddess who, the pre-Greek people, she was their nature goddess. She gave birth to humanity. She was the goddess of, basically the mother goddess of all nature, animals, fertility, the movement of the earth. Now you have to remember, we have Etna nearby. We have earthquakes happening in this area very commonly. And so the native people imagined the earth was giving labor and that she was a woman, just like a woman, human being that they were familiar with, giving birth. So they identified their themselves with this goddess Ibla. And then when the Greeks came, they decided she was either similar to Hera or similar to Aphrodite. And so we know this town in ancient times as Ibla Area. Okay, so you're going to hear that. This Ibla also, there was a famous temple to her on Etna, in the town Ibla Galetes, which is ancient. It's, we think, near modern Paterno. So, and what these, and usually her temples were near some kind of volcanic place or a mud volcano, sort of like Old Faithful, right? In Yosemite, in Yellowstone. These kind of things exist in Sicily as well. And so those were considered portals to the underworld. Now I want you to look at this picture. I took this when I was in Ibla at 5 o'clock in the morning, during a full moon. And one of the things that I want you to think about when you travel actually is, if you have a full moon or when you watch the sunrise, where does the sun rise? where does the sun shine? On what hill in the morning? When the moon rises, where does the moon rise? Because when you're an ancient people, the sun and the moon are your light at night and day, obviously, and they affect how you're thinking of things. And in the end, it also affects where you might put your temples, right? So we're looking at modern Ragusa here. And on the left here of my screen, we have Santa Maria delle Scale, which is a very famous church. And on the right, we have the Chiesa di Santa Lucia, also known as Santa Veneranda. Now, notice Venere, which is Venus in Italian. So Santa Lucia and Venus here are very connected if they named a church after her, okay? And my guess is that in this place, because of the way the moon was rising, and in the morning the sun shines on this hill, these two places were probably where ancient temples were. And most of the time, that's what you can guess. If there's a castle in a place, or if there is a church, especially high on a hill like these, you can assume most of the time that there is some kind of ancient temple to a deity on the foundation of those churches. So Christianity came in and wanted to change your association of that place from the pagan deity, and they put their Christian churches in the place. Now, Ragusa, because of an earthquake in 1693 that really flattened everything, we have really no ancient sites in Ragusa Ibla and Ragusa, modern Ragusa, because they've been just completely covered. They were lost completely in the earthquake, or they've now been covered with modern buildings, or buildings from the 17th century and 18th century. So here is a look at, this is a picture from the Cava d'Ispica, which is near Modica, and you can get a sense of, here's some caves, okay? So that's what I was saying, people lived in caves. These are also tombs, ancient tombs. This is all limestone, and we are actually in a gorge that was cut by a river for centuries. So think of it like a little Grand Canyon in a way. And so this is the Iblean territory, just to give you a sense of what that's like. So like I was saying, we have that whole region. There's another Magara Iblea is another Ibla town, and Magara Iblea no longer exists. It's actually in the middle of an industrial zone now. You can go there, but it's actually pretty miserable to visit. There's not much to see on the site itself, but it's one of the first colonies that the Greeks founded. Okay, so what they did, the Greeks, is in order to incorporate the Iblean, the Siculi that were living in this Iblean area, they adopted the name of Iblea, which was also the name of a king who helped the Greeks when they arrived. So it was a way of making diplomacy with the local people, Magara Iblea. And I bring that up because one of the main amazing artifacts, especially when we're considering divine feminine in Sicily, is this statue that you will find in the museum in Siracusa. So I'll go back because you can look closely at it. So notice we have two twins nursing the great mother goddess, right? This is an incredible image, and it is in the museum of the Orsi Archaeological Museum in Siracusa. So she is a mother goddess. She was founded Magara Iblea. And unfortunately, she's from 550 BC, and it's made of local limestone, right? That limestone cliff that you saw, that's the material that was used to build this statue. So the thing that's this amazing about this statue is it was actually rebuilt, because when they were building that industrial zone that I mentioned, the way they found this statue is someone was with a digging into the ground with one of those machines, and the machine wouldn't go any further. They had to go and dig, and they found this incredible limestone just that stopped the thing in its tracks. Now the head, of course, is totally gone, but we have the body, which really shows you 550 BCE, okay, how the mother goddess, look at this, it was just incredible, this piece of art. So another piece of art that I think shows a lot of value of this time period of ancient Sicily was found in Gran Michele, the area of Gran Michele, which again is another town that was destroyed in that same earthquake in 1693. But in a necropolis there, they found this statue, which is another mother goddess. and she probably had a child in her lap. And I want you to look at this really carefully because it's kind of fascinating to see it. It was created between 490 and 40 BCE, before Common Era. So she's really shows an intermingling of the two populations that were still getting to know each other, right? I mean, the Greeks arrived in 735 BCE, but still centuries later, you're still incorporating generations of people into the colonies, because it wasn't hundreds of Greeks that showed up, just a few at a time, and they started coming over the period. So they had to intermingle with the Sicel population. And this piece of art really shows how the mother goddess was combined with the ancient Greek concept of artwork, because they didn't do a whole lot of mother goddess art before this. You know, Isis, from Egypt, she had a horse sitting on her lap, but the Greeks didn't have a lot of this imagery of the mother goddess with a child on her lap. Again, this is in the Museo Orsi in Siracusa. So once again, just to give you a map idea of where we are in Siracusa, here is southeastern Sicily on the coast. And Siracusa was one of the most important cities in ancient Greece. It rivaled Athens in its heyday. So this is our modern piazza. Again, was rebuilt. It's in Baroque style because it was rebuilt after the 1693 earthquake, right? But one of the things to note, and this is sort of around the corner, I took that original picture right where these people are standing, right? So if you go back, I was standing here, and then if you look at where I was, this is the lane, let's say, next to the Duomo. And what I want you to notice about this Duomo, okay, is notice the Doric columns here that are inside the wall of the Duomo church. That is the Temple of Athena. So during the early Christian times, the Byzantines took the existing Temple of Athena. Again, here are the columns, and they incorporated them to create a basilica here. Now, the current basilica has this Baroque facade on it, but before that it was medieval looking. And then, of course, there were the the Arabs attacked, etc. There was earthquakes, and then things changed. The other thing to note, on this other side, across from the Temple of Athena, right next to it, was where we think there was a temple to Artemis, also known as Diana in Roman times. So in the middle of Ortigia, this is where we are. These two temples, the Temple of Athena and the Temple of Artemis, were right next to each other. And we know, some of you have been there, obviously, and you've probably seen the Temple of Apollo, or at least the foundations of it. And if you know anything about Artemis, which I think we're going to learn something about her, but her brother was Apollo, her twin brother. So again, what I'm trying to say here is that I want to make sure that you understand that the Greeks really had to work hard to incorporate themselves into the existing Sicel population, because the Sicels, they had a whole civilization here. So one of the things that they did was to create myths that connected Greece to Ortigia, to Siracusa, to Sicily, and they took their myths from Greece and then placed them in Sicily. And so you'll see this theme happen a lot. And this happens from going from pagan deities to Christian deities. Well, the Greeks did it to convince the Siculi that it was okay that they were there. So many of you may have seen this Fonte Aretusa. We're looking at actually papyrus. This is one of the few places in Europe that papyrus grows naturally. And the Fonte Aretusa has a legend to it. And the legend has to do with the nymph Aretusa and the goddess Artemis or Diana. So what is a nymph? That's an important thing to define right now. Well, nymphs are usually virgin maidens, and they are sort of a deity. Usually, sometimes they were a combination of, but generally they're mythical creatures, and they are sort of responsible for a place, a stream or a spring in this case, right? The Fonte Aretusa is a natural spring water. Sometimes a mountain, sometimes a river. Okay, so in the case of Aretusa, she was a nymph who was living in Greece, and she was in the forest, and she decided she wanted to go swimming in this beautiful spring this river that she was by in Greece. And so she took her clothes off, she went in the water, and she felt something mingling with her in the water. And it turned out to be the river god Alpheus. And she was not happy feeling Alpheus in there, but he, of course, fell in love with her because she was beautiful and virginal, all these things. Well, she jumped out and she started to run because she was trying to get away from him. But it's very hard to get away from a river, obviously. And in this image, you can see Alpheus here behind Diana, or Artemis. You can always tell it's Artemis because she's got her bow and arrow, and she's usually fully dressed. And poor Aretusa cannot outrun the river Alpheus. So she calls to Diana, she calls to Artemis and asks for help. And Artemis turns her into a freshwater spring, and she is able to then dive into the Ionian Sea as this freshwater spring, or go underneath the earth in Greece as this freshwater spring. And she comes up, she goes under the Ionian Sea and comes up, where do you think? Well, exactly here in Ortigia. Okay, so that's why this is called the Fonte Aretusa. This is a freshwater spring that's right at the edge of the Ionian Sea, the bay there in Siracusa. And the idea is that the Greeks could tell the Siculi, look, we have our deity, this little nymph, Aretusa, she came from Greece, she's coming up here. We have a right to be here in this place, this island, which of course is very strategically placed. You have to be there. There's a castle. In terms of defending the coastline, it's essential Ortigia. So this is how they made sure that they were able to convince the local population that they should be there. So, all right, so let's see. I'm going to keep going. So that's where our connection. One of the things that's also important to know about Aretusa, and I'm going to mention her again later when we talk about Demeter, because they always find a way to kind of, in their storytelling, sort of bring these personalities into other stories. And we see Aretusa again. She's one of the people that tells Demeter that as she travels under the Ionian Sea, under the earth, she saw Persephone in the underworld. So we're going to talk about that story, which is essential to understanding Sicily momentarily. But so Aretusa comes back. Her role being under the earth comes back to us, an important thing. One thing I want to point out, and Tony, you can speak to this because I have a photo of you looking at this coin, actually, Tony Alessino. So this is Aretusa. In fact, I have her on my ring. See, I even have her on my ring. So this is a coin that they remade into jewelry, and I wear her sometimes. So you can see the importance of Aretusa in terms of Siracusa, because she was on their money, and you can tell it's her because she has dolphins swimming around her. And this is just a beautiful coin that it can be found in the Museum Orsay. So there's a lot to see there. So like I was mentioning, Demeter and Core are very, very important. So let's talk about who these two are. And here they are in a display that's in the museum in Adonie. This is from the Morgantina. And the thing to know about Demeter and Core is that it's a mother-daughter, wise woman, maiden. It's a duality. It's really the two of them actually. I mean, we know the story of them being separate people, of course, but when you're talking about seeing them in imagery, it's often difficult to tell who's who, because even though Demeter's the mother, she's still young looking and beautiful, but she's extremely wise in her behavior. And Core, maiden, is what that means, or girl, becomes Persephone. And so here's the story. We have to talk about the story. It's essential to understanding Sicily. So just to define who these folks are, Demeter is the earth mother. She's the Greek goddess of fruitful earth, fertility, harvest, grain, ripened produce. We talked about her during Western Sicily because there's a sanctuary to her, Mellaphoros, which means the fruit. So there you go. She has a lot to do with fruit and the fertility of the land, and especially grains, especially wheat. She is one of the main Olympian gods. So she is the sister of Zeus. She's a daughter of Rhea. So these are very important to know that her status is very, very high. You'll often see her holding piglets because in sacrifices they would kill pigs and barbecue them, and the smoke was considered to give her a sustenance. And that sounds terrible on one hand, but then don't you eat pork all the time? So that's essentially what these quote sacrifices are. It's really just a barbecue essentially, and then the smoke is considered to feed the gods because it's rising up. Persephone is the goddess of the underworld. She's the wife of Hades. Plutone also is another, we would call him in Italian. She represents young vegetation. She represents spring, the innocence of spring, whereas Demeter is the wisdom of controlling all these things, the harvest and fertility. Persephone controls spring and winter because she's under the earth. She is the holder of the seeds, which we know coming out of winter. We've just had like incredible things here happening in the New York area where I am. It's an explosion of color. It's the confetti. It's the announcement that Persephone has returned to the earth after she had the seeds under the earth all winter, gestating there. And the pomegranate is very important in terms of her, because when she was in the underworld, she ate the pomegranate that Hades had given her. And the symbolism of that is that she became his betrothed. By accepting the seeds of the pomegranate that she ate, she became betrothed to him. And she also took on the role of queen of the underworld in that case. And so she is a psychopomp. She's a spirit that helps you cross over from the upper world to the lower world. That's her role, which she takes very seriously and really covets. And that's something to know, that we think of the story as the rape of Persephone, that she was pulled down to the underworld. Yes, she wasn't exactly knowledgeable that she was going to get pulled down there, but I have reading this story a lot in the recent months and really analyzing it. It's almost as if Zeus arranged a marriage for her. And Zeus and Hades are brothers, and so is Demeter, their sister. And so she went, it was time for her to be married, and Demeter as a mother didn't want to let her daughter go. So there's an aspect of the mother-daughter relationship here that also, this story can be, it's very deep. It's quite deep actually when you start going into it. We learn in school that it is the cycles of life and death, the reason we have seasons, because yes, okay, so Persephone is a young maiden, she's virginal, she's playing in the field. Near the Greeks had to place her in Sicily, much like they had to place Aretusa to claim this is the connection to the motherland, and that's why we're here, and she's mystical, and she belongs, and we belong here in Ortygia. What they did is they brought this Demeter and Persephone story from Greece, and then they placed it in the center of Sicily. There is a lake, and I'm going to show you that lake in a minute, Lago Ragusa, and that lake is near Enna. And I'm gonna skip ahead to show you the lake actually. Okay, so, and I'll come back to this. Okay, so here is the lake, and she is playing by the lake picking flowers with her maidens, and what happens is Hades comes up in his chariot and he grabs her and pulls her down into the underworld. So Demeter hears her screams, okay, but doesn't know what happened to her. Demeter is distraught. She's totally in love with her daughter, and meshed with her daughter, if you will, and she's distraught. And so in her distress, looking for her daughter, she lets everything on the earth die. And so people are starving on the earth's surface because nothing is fertile. Well, Zeus is looking at this, and he's like, uh-oh, we can't let this happen. And that's where Aretusa says, I saw her in the underworld, and a few other people give it, tell Demeter some hints that she's with Hades. And so she's obstinate that she wants her daughter back. And Zeus says, well, she did eat some of the pomegranate seeds, and so she's kind of Hades' wife now. And in fact, Persephone is happy to be down in the underworld. She is now betrothed to Hades, who is a good husband to her. Well, what they decide is that, because Demeter just won't relent, is that she will be in the underworld for 3 to 6 months, depending on what climate you're in, depending on where you live. She'll be in the underworld for 3 to 6 months. And that is when we have winter, the time when the land is barren and nothing is growing because Demeter is sad. When she comes up to the upper world again, we have spring and summer, and Demeter is happy because her daughter is there. So in school, we learn that this is, this story is because of the core Persephone going to the underworld, but in fact, she is, it's a much deeper story. And so this is called the Eleusinian mysteries. Eleusia is in Greece, and that's where some of these originated. But then, of course, like I said, they brought the myth and placed it in Sicily for the Siculi population, and then it spread like wildfire. And especially because some of the governors of ancient Sicilian towns, especially in Gela, they took Gela as a city in southeastern Sicily. It's very industrial, so many people don't visit there. But they used this story as a way of creating a community, and they used Demeter and the idea of fertility to create an agricultural society. So their importance was very, very significant during this ancient period, which leads me to this. So here we are back in Siracusa, and we're looking at the foundation of what was the late 5th, early 4th century BCE sanctuary for Demeter and Persephone. And actually here it is at the foot of the sanctuary of the Madonna of the Tears. So one of the things important to know is that this was discovered, the ancient ruins were discovered in 1973 when they broke ground to build the sanctuary for the Madonna of the Tears. And this building is quite a fascinating building. I now have a new love for it in recent times, but it's supposed to look like a tear. And the other thing about it that's architects will tell you, it was built to withstand a huge amount of seismic activity. So architects come to Syracuse to study this building. But the thing that's really incredible about this, which Rosa Rizza, the guide that I work with often, we have this theory that the Madonna in the Mother Earth, she knew where she wanted her sanctuary to go. She wanted her Madonna of the Tear sanctuary to be right near where her original sanctuary was back from early pre-Christian times. And so actually the Madonna of the Tear sanctuary was supposed to be exactly where the foundation of this ancient sanctuary is now, but they ended up moving it to protect what is left of this sanctuary of Demeter and Kore. So here's a look at what this sanctuary looks like. It's very different than a temple that you might be familiar with, where a temple is like a church. Basically, you would just go in, it's a singular building. But in the case of Demeter and Kore, and Hades also, who's in this mix, it's actually a little campus. It's a sanctuary, it's a campus. So there is a temple, but there's also fountains, and there's bathing pools and other places to pray. And the reason why is because of the Eleusinian mysteries were practiced inside the temple walls, and it was mysterious. We actually don't know what these rituals were, because they were done behind the temple wall. So unless you were initiated into this religion, you don't actually know what happened, and they were sworn to secrecy. So, but we can guess that inside these temple walls annually they would reenact the Persephone going into the underworld and what it was like to be down under the earth and in darkness and having nothing to eat and being in winter, etc. So we can imagine what those rituals might have been. So just to give you an idea, how do we know about this temple being what it is? And the reason why is because we have thousands of votive statues. And I've just given you, a little bit of a look at below. On the bottom, we have Padre Pio, we have the Madonna, we have Jesus. These are modern day votive statues, right? versus the ancient ones that are above them. And you can see Demeter's holding a piglet. And so these were statues. They were made from molds. They're terracotta. Thousands of them similar to this are found in the museum, Orsi, and they were all found at that sanctuary in the 1970s and 80s when they did the excavation of that site. Some important things to look at here is the headdress on Demeter. She's seated at a throne, or she has a piglet with her. The headdress is very important because we're going to see that same hairstyle come up, and we can often distinguish between Demeter and Persephone because Demeter often will have the headdress, whereas a Persephone character will have, look, she's got a cute bow here, so more girlish, right? Or nothing at all. So that's how sometimes you can distinguish between the two of them, but it's not so easy. So before I mention Enna and Lago Ragusa, see where it is right in the middle of Sicily. It's really in the center. And this actually is sort of the dividing line between Eastern and Western Sicily a little bit. But the point is the cult of Demeter and Persephone extended that far. And this is the view from where the temple to Demeter was in Enna. I want you to, if I can, if it's even possible from a photograph, and in fact, Mount Etna is here in this cloud. Okay, so this view is astounding. And the next slide, I'm just going to show you, that's the edge of the cliff where you stand to see that view when you're in Enna. And the reason you go to Enna really is to see this 365-degree view of the Sicilian hinterland. Look at all of these fields. This is all grain. So when you're here in spring, this picture was taken in September, so the wheat season is over, and they're actually turning the fields over to prepare to plant the wheat again, which they do in October and November. But you can get the sense of the scope of where they put the temple to Demeter was so she could see her land, she could see the landscape, and it's a really powerful place to visit as a tourist to understand the power of Demeter. And you can see the modern autostrada there below, and it's really quite extraordinary. And here again is Lago Ragusa. Okay, so nearby Enna is Morgantina, which is another town, important town where we found a lot of Demeter and Persephone artifacts, founded in about 450 before Common Era. And here we have some beautiful, beautiful artifacts. The statue on the left, they still don't know who it is. I'm convinced it's Demeter myself. And Persephone, we know, is this little tiny statue in the middle. It looks big because it's the photograph is quite deceptive, but the archaeologists won't tell you who this goddess is, even though to me, look at how similar the two of them standing. It's a very, to me, considering that where they found her in Morgantina, I think it's Demeter, but who am I? I'm just me. I'm not an archaeologist officially. So, but meanwhile, these again show you the difference between how you might see the young Corey, Persephone, and Demeter with her headdress. Unfortunately, it's cut off in this picture, but anyway, so moving on, we also have Venus, and Venus is of course important, more important probably in Western Sicily, but everywhere in the ancient world, Venus was present. And this statue was found in Siracusa. It's a 2nd century Common Era, so a Roman era statue, but it's actually a copy of a Greek statue from the 2nd century before Christ, before Common Era. So this is Venus was present in Siracusa. And the thing to know about Aphrodite, Venus, and Aphrodite is the Greek name, the Romans spread her as Venus around, so a lot of us just call her Venus, is that her real role was just about love, passion, seduction. She inspired mating. She was not really a fertility goddess. It was an accidental thing that she was a fertility goddess. It was really about mating in terms of getting inspired to mate. That was her role. She's important because she is also very high up in the Olympian gods. She was born in the sea that came to shore of Cyprus, and you can see that she was born from Uranus's, was castrated by Kronos, and she came from the genitals that were thrown into the sea. And Aphros actually means foam. So her name comes from foam because the foam from the genitals and the sea foam created her. So she has a connection to the sea. Greeks invoked her to protect them while they were traveling by sea. And she's a kind of combination of a lot of different goddesses. So going back through the third century, third millennium, she's created, connected to Inanna, to Ishtar, to Astarte, who we find in Aretusa in Western Sicily. We know her as the Aphrodite, and then of course Venus, like I mentioned, and her son is Eros or Cupid. Okay, so you'll often see the mischievous Eros with her. And we don't know a whole lot about her temples because the Christians made sure they destroyed them because they wanted anything to do with lust and passion. They wanted to expel that from our thinking, right? So we don't know much about her, but she is very, very important during ancient times. And in Aretusa, she was extremely important because we still know that her temple was there. Another goddess, and I'm moving through these goddesses because they begin to morph. Okay, so Cybele, you might have heard of her or might not, but she's extremely important. She gave birth to the other gods. She's the great mother of the gods. In terms of where she came from, she was brought from Anatolia, which is modern day Turkey, from that peninsula, the massive Asia Minor peninsula, if you will. She is she's often worshipped on mountaintops. She's the ruler of wild beasts, and she's related to bees. Her name is also Phrygian, which is again also Phrygia is Turkey area. Okay, so it's part of Turkey, modern day Turkey. You can find Cybele. This is actually a picture from the Naples Archaeological Museum when I was visiting there. And here's another one from I believe this is from Naples also. I took this in the Naples Archaeological Museum. So she was brought from the east, and that's important. We're going to learn why coming up. And her rituals were ecstatic, similar to Dionysian rituals, which included a lot of music, a lot of wine, a lot of ecstasy, a lot of drumming, and flute playing in the wilderness. Okay, and in the spring she was celebrated because she was coming back to life. And so she becomes, like I said, she is morphed into somewhat of Demeter, somewhat of Hera, somewhat of all of these goddesses, but she actually was very, very important. But the thing is that Homer and Hesiod had already written their mythologies that we refer to. So because she came later into the lexicon of the Greek and Romans. Okay, so that's why she doesn't have the notoriety, let's say, of somebody like Hera or Demeter. However, her importance is really vital. And so one of the things you can tell is also similar to Demeter is her crown, right? She's got this polos type of headdress on, and you can always find her holding a tambourine, and also she's seated with her lions, or she'll see her with a chariot and her lions. Now, why is this important? Well, she was, like I said, she was important in Rome. Certainly, she even had a temple in Rome, but she also had a temple. Oh, I'm skipping ahead. Okay, she also had a temple here in Tindari, which we will get to. But one of the things that I want to bring up, and this is a site that not many people know, but when I learned about it, I was really fascinated by it, and I wanted to share it with you. So there is a town called Carey, or I should say it's an archaeological site that's an ancient town. It's in Palazzolo Acreide, the modern town of Palazzolo Acreide. It's up on the hill. So up on a hill, like similar to what we just heard, that Cybele is worshipped up on the hill, but the hill is really in the middle of the Iblean Mountains, and it has a very, very panoramic view from it. So you can really control the whole territory from the top of this hill. Here's a look at this ancient Carey. So it was founded in 663 before Common Era, and by Syracusans that came inland. Okay, you can see number 4, there is a small amphitheater there. This was rebuilt by the Romans, but the Greeks had an amphitheater there before. And then this is a hill. going here. So all of these 12, 13, and 14, this is a hill. So I want to I'm going to explain why that's important in a minute. But 8 and 7, okay, these numbers are where there was a temple of Artemis and a temple of Aphrodite. So you can get a sense that ancient Acrae had a lot going on. So what was going on here in 12, 13, and 14? There's a hill. You have to go down this hill to access this place. Well, down this hill is a thing called I Santoni, the saints, the big saints is what more sort of a modern Italian name of this is. And here I am, this is Rosa, Rizza, and I with the custodian, and we are going down the hill. And it's kind of like between these two hills, you can see. And what is down that hill is, and I have a video because it's probably better to show you the video, but there are reliefs that have been carved into the side of the hill. Now, the idea is that up at that top where Rosa was walking, there was a sacrificial altar. And so they would sacrifice animals at the top, and the blood would run down the hill to feed the land at the bottom of the hill. And then along the route down the hill, you would see, and again, this is I Santoni, 4th to 3rd century BCE is when these were built. These are reliefs. They're carved into the limestone. There are 12 of these reliefs. And this is it's low resolution, so it's hard to see, but you can get a sense of along this hillside going down the hill. It's almost like the Stations of the Cross in a way. You could think of it like that. This is a site that's dedicated to Cybele, and that's why I was talking about her. So unfortunately, this is what these look like now. Okay, they're really rough and tumble. But you can get a sense, like here is her crown. Here's Cybele sitting on her throne. Okay, here's a small figure next to her. They've analyzed this a lot. Unfortunately, shepherds didn't know what they were. People didn't know what they were. They threw rocks at them. They just would use them as target practice. They would just destroy them over the centuries. It's so unfortunate because this is quite an extraordinary site. So I'm going to play this video. It's about 30 seconds for you, so you can get a sense of what this place was. It's hard to explain, but I'm going to talk a little bit while the video is on. So it's along the southern side of this hill, the Orbital Hill. And again, it's a 3rd, 4th century BCE complex. And it has 12 of these niches that are carved into the limestone rock. And they found oil lamps and jars, etc., in the area. So they identify it as a sanctuary of some kind, where and maybe a funerary thing, because I want to say that because of it. I'm going to play it again while I'm talking. So you can get a look at it, because of the sense of the blood running down and going into the quote underworld, because Cybele is also related to the dark as well as the light. And so, you know, she was venerated all over Sicily. And so this particular place, again, it's 3rd, 4th century, so it's later in time. This site actually becomes where it's almost like all of the goddesses come together here, because what they can figure out is we see Persephone in some of these. We see Castor and Pollux, who are also some of these Dioscuri, these dark gods. They're all kind of in these, when the archaeologists were really analyzing these images, that's what they came up with. So this is called I Santoni again. It's really a particular place. Not many people visit this, but when I heard about it, I thought I have to go see this place. Now, these are some drawings that they're not really real, but it gives you an idea of what someone in the 18th century might have seen before these things got destroyed. This is a French painter who painted what he saw, or his imagination of what he saw of I Santoni. So you know, you can see they're not huge. But they're life size. These statues are definitely life size. Like if I was sitting next to one of these, you would get a sense of that it's about my size, let's say. Okay, so it's a fascinating site for people who are really into the esoteric. So okay, so now we're sort of moving forwards. How do these things, these ancient deities, these ancient feminine deities, how do they play into today's society? Well, here we are in Catania, which we know is the second city, second largest city in Sicily. This is the Duomo, the Basilica for Sant'Agata, Saint Agatha, and she is a virgin martyr, and she lived in 250 AD, 250 Common Era. And here is a picture of her ark that they carry during her feast days in February, which is the 3rd through the 5th of February. This is photos I took when I was there, and this is what she looks like. She was she refused the advances of the Roman prefect, and she was tortured. She was tortured by having her breasts mutilated. And so now she's the patron saint of breasts and breast cancer. She refused to relent, and she was an early Christian, and that was why she didn't want to be with the Roman prefect, and she had sworn herself to Christ, and so she became an inspiration for many early Christians. So she's important in Eastern Sicily, and so a lot of what we see in terms of her being a virgin and some of the iconography that they associate with her is reminiscent of what we know from past times. So there was an effort by the Christian church to create to transfer the veneration from these ancient pagan deities into the Christian saints, or the martyrs in this case. Here we have Santa Lucia. This is the Caravaggio that was painted in 1608 by Caravaggio when he was in Siracusa, the burial of Santa Lucia. And she was inspired by Sant'Agata. She died in 304 AD, and so she was inspired by the fortitude of Sant'Agata, and therefore Siracusa is down the road. That's where she was, and she knew about Sant'Agata. She visited her sanctuary in Catania and was inspired by her. When she was betrothed to marry a young Roman pagan man, and she had already decided she was Christian, again, an early Christian, she told her mother she did not want to marry this pagan. And at the time, Christianity was outlawed. This again is 304 AD. And the pagan young man, who now was not going to get his dowry, because she decided her dowry was going to go to help the poor. So he turned her into the authorities. Well, the authorities came to take her away and put her in a brothel, which was the punishment for young women who broke the law. And they couldn't move her. Oxen couldn't move her. In the midst of this, her eyes got gouged out. There's a whole legend about the eyes, which is why she's got eyes on a plate. Sant'Agata, you're going to know that she's Sant'Agata because she's got breasts on a plate. Santa Lucia, we know because she's got eyes on a plate. I talk more about these two during their feast days, certainly on my blog on experiencesicily.com. So in December, we get into a lot of Santa Lucia, but again, there's a lot of this virginal, the nymph thing, and the older man, and the Persephone, the older man coming for her. These images and a lot of these ideas are brought over. The thing about Santa Lucia that's really connected to what we've been talking about is that she is the patron saint of Syracuse, certainly, but also grain. Okay, and so we celebrate her having relieved us from a famine in the 17th century. So we need a patroness of grain in Sicily because grain is so important. Well, they took Demeter, what her veneration was, and they pushed that to Santa Lucia. So in that 17th century, we really own the story of Santa Lucia, even though she died in 304 AD. So she's very important in terms of deities in the southeastern Sicily and all of Sicily, really, and in Christianity in general. She's a very powerful saint. So Tindari. All right, so speaking of modern, how do we take all of these ancient deities that were worshipped and venerated for so many years, so many centuries? How do we get you over to Christianity? Well, you find a way, you make a myth, you make a legend. And here's Tindari on the top of this incredible promontory. Again, do you see where it is on the Tyrrhenian Sea here, or northeastern Sicily here? This is the basilica right here. Oops. Here it is on this. It's incredible. And I'm going to show you what the view from there looks like. And here is an ancient site. The ancient town of Tindari was founded in 396 by the Greeks. It then became Roman. Okay. But it was a very wealthy town during ancient Greek times. Here is the top of the basilica from the ancient site. And here's the basilica, which was built in the 1950s. And so what is in this basilica? Look at this place. Look at the cliff it's on. Again, anywhere you see a church with amazing view where there's a cliff, there was probably, or even a castle in the case of the Castello di Venere and Erice, there was probably some kind of temple there. And in the case of Tindari, it was the temple to Cybele. And here's the view below and these are people down here, okay, to give you a sense of how small. Look at the little boat, okay, this is how high up this promontory is. It's quite extraordinary. And this beach looks very sandy from where you are, but it's actually a rocky beach, and it changes. This form changes often because the rocks get moved according to what's going on and if there's a storm or whatever. So here is our Black Madonna of Tindari. So this is a very famous place. And that basilica was built in the 1950s in order to receive all the pilgrims that were going to see this Black Madonna. Negra sum sed formosa. Black, I am black but beautiful. That's what that means. So let's talk about the Black Madonna. So how did this Black Madonna, this statue, come to be in Tindari? Now, let's remember, there was in that spot a sanctuary or a temple to Cybele, this mother goddess, the mother goddess of gods, right? Very, very important. Who came from Anatolia, who came from the East. All right, so we now have this black statue that says, I am black but beautiful. Here's the legend. So in the 15th century, okay, I'm going to venture to guess there were still a lot of people in this area venerating Cybele. That's what I'm going to venture to guess. And again, 15th century, we're in the Norman we're a little past the Norman era now. We're entering the Spanish era, actually, and they really want to Christianize Sicily. Anyone who's still hanging on to their pagan deities, they want to transfer their veneration over to Christianity. How do they do that? Well, they come up with these stories. They come up with these incredible situations. Well, in the case of Tindari, this statue was on a boat that was traveling from the east. Anatolia is in the east, right? It's traveling from the east, and the boat lands on that beach that you saw. It cannot move. The sailors are trying to move the boat from that place, and it just can't. They start throwing things off the boat because the boat's full of cargo. The boat will not move. Finally, they're like, oh, just pull that massive box out. That's the thing that's holding us here. We got to get that out of the boat. They finally take the box out, and what's in the box? This Black Madonna statue with her son in her lap. Looks familiar, right? Remember Gran Michele? Remember that? Right. So again, you're trying to transfer the Siculi people over to Greek mythology, or at that time. Now we have Madonna. We have the Madonna and her child Jesus, right? So the Black Madonna of Tindari, you can read on the right here, goddesses from the ancient world merged and adapted. There were goddesses from the ancient world that were merged. In other words, you have Venus, you have a little bit of Venus, you have a little bit of Cybele, you have a little bit of Demeter, you have a little bit of Persephone, perhaps, all merging into this sensual looking, dark skinned. She's not African, she's just a dark-skinned deity. Venus was dark-skinned because she was from Cyprus. She was from the east, right? Cybele is from the east. Demeter is the mother of the earth, the god. Look at what the earth looks like when you turn it over. It's dark, it's fertile, right? So that's why we have the Black Madonna. She's representing all these ancient goddesses, these ancient dark goddesses, these sensual, fertile goddesses. That's what the Black Madonna represents in our archetypal memory, right? So the artwork is often Byzantine in nature. So these Black Madonnas, they're all over the southern Mediterranean. There's one in Custonaci. There's other stories in Chiaramonte del Golfi in southeastern Sicily, in near Palermo, the Madonna di at Altavilla, the Madonna di Milicia. These are they all have similar stories. They come on a boat, they're a painting, they're a statue. They get somehow in a storm, or they get stuck on the beach, and somehow they have to stay where they have landed. That's the story. And so the people are like all excited that they had this incredible gift that somehow showed up, and the legend is born, and then they start venerating this new Madonna that has been put in their laps, basically. So this is the Black Madonna of Tindari, and again, it's just divine feminine, bringing over the common people into your scope. So that is you know, the story for tonight. Lots of coverage. Just to give you, you know, again, I have lots of tours coming up, and we're going to do a Q&A shortly. October, stunning Sicily. I can't wait. I know some people on the call tonight are interested in coming or are planning to come. Here's Aretusa. Actually, the Temple of Venus is right here on this mountainside here. So we will be going to Aretusa during stunning Sicily. And then we start up again in 2022. We have Enchanting Sicily in May, which is a sort of spring version of what we'll do in October. This is Salemi and the beautiful clover on the side of the mountain. We have yoga in Sicily, and you can again meet Cleo next Friday night to do some yoga. Here I am in Siracusa doing yoga in the piazza. Secret Sicily in July, which is going to be fantastic, in Licodia e Eubea. This is a real immersive, you live in Licodia e Eubea for 10 days, and we see a lot of what we've talked about tonight, actually, in southeastern Sicily. And in September, we do Stirring Sicily, which is our food and wine hands-on cooking classes. And we have 2 alumni from that trip, from Deb and Wayne. We're on that trip back in 2016. And then again in October in 2022, we will do Stunning Sicily again. I hope you'll join me for Cannoli Crawl, etc. And here I am, Allison Scola. So I'm going to take some questions. And then, of course, I hope you'll stick around for a few more minutes if you have questions. But it was such a pleasure to present this information to you all tonight. Please feel free to take yourself off mute if you want to ask, or you can put something in the chat. So I'm happy to answer questions. Lots of information, lots of esoteric stuff that, like I said, I'm working on a book. So these are the kinds of things that, if you want to really see Sicily through this lens of the divine feminine and the sacred feminine, this is the kind of stuff I'm going to be covering. So Marianne, your family's from Augusta, right? So that is near Siracusa, and it's the coastline there is beautiful, and it's magari Ibla is really close to that. And Roberto, thank you so much, Roberto, for tuning in from Tuscany. So nice to have you here. Let's see.
Thank you. It was really outstanding. I know very well Sicily, and you said a lot of things that I didn't know. So it's incredible, and really appreciated. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
Really hope to join you in October. It would be fantastic.
That would be great.
Thanks. I strongly recommend, because I think you hit a lot of points of Sicily that are very, very characteristic of Sicily, and unknown to the most. So really, I think it's incredible. Thank you.
Thank you
so
you.
much.
Grazie.
Grazie.
Grazie mille.
Grazie.
So anyone have some questions for me? Any curiosities? And you don't even have to ask about tonight's topics if you have anything else. Anna Marie, you're interested in yoga. Fantastic. Well, I hope I get to see you next week. I'll be also practicing yoga next Friday evening with everyone. Let's see, anyone else? So I know Francesca was on the call. Francesca and I.
Sono qui.
Ciao.
Sono in macchina con Luisa.
Excellent.
Saluta.
Well, you know, Cybele is a very important figure in terms of Tarantella, and Francesca and I do the Tarantella. Francesca is one of the dancers with Alessandra Belloni, who is my teacher for Tarantella and drumming, and obviously with the Cybele holding that drum, right? The drum is very important, and so that's one of the things we talk about a lot when we're talking about Tarantella. when
I
we
know,
went to Alessandra.
Allison, do you remember when we had the entire female ensemble called Le Figlie di Cybele?
Yes, of course.
That was the best. Even Luisa performed with us at Joe's
Yes.
Pub. She was like, what,
Yes.
3?
Yes, she was very young at St. John the Divine. That was a beautiful, beautiful show that we did at St. John the Divine with Alessandra. Yes.
I know. Hopefully again soon.
Hopefully again soon. I miss that a lot. So yes, and one of the things we do when we travel together is we do some tarantella. I usually have live music at least one night that we're there together, and I always do a little bit of a baby tarantella class because I want to get you moving. And it's a really joyous way of celebrating Sicily, certainly. Who else has some questions? Anyone else tonight have questions for me?
I don't have any questions, but I just wanted to let you know that every year we watch the Giro d'Italia, which started last Saturday, and it's like a 3-week tour of Italy. And they have gone to Sicily on the times, but they didn't this year. So, but it's it's 4 hours of landscape basically. If
Right.
you're not interested,
Marcus, where do you watch that? What channel do you watch that on?
UCN. It's $50 a year for a membership. It's a cycling.
Okay.
But
Yes.
yeah, it's
Yes.
fun.
Yeah, last year they were in Sicily. I know that. I remember that people were talking about
Right.
Giro d'Italia being in Sicily. Yeah, it's quite a course in Sicily because Sicily has a lot of mountain ranges. People take for granted, they're thinking, oh, it's an island, it's small, but the mountain ranges don't make it easy for cycling at all. So yeah, it's quite a course. Thanks for that tip. Anyone else?
Well, I don't have a question, but I just want to say the most memorable part of our trip with you was the last night when you brought that group in and we played music and we danced and we sang. And I just thought that was wonderful. And that was the wonderful ending to a great, great time over there with you.
Thank you, Wayne. It was a beautiful evening. We had the folk music group from Palermo come to Castelvolturno, and they were fantastic. It's true. That was a wonderful night. I remember well. I have video from it too. So yeah. Yep. And Tony, we did that in Agrigento. We had a trio come and we danced one evening in Agrigento, which was a lot of fun, So the question, Marianne, yes, I am recording this tonight. And so I will be putting it on my YouTube channel, on the Experience Sicily YouTube channel. So I'll be sending out the link to you all in a follow-up email, probably maybe not tomorrow, but Friday perhaps. So definitely in the next couple of days. It takes me, if I have to download it and then upload it and all that stuff. So you'll hear from me and it will be there to watch again if you'd like. Anyone else? A question, a comment? Thank you so much. Thank you all so much. It's such a pleasure to see you. These events have really sustained me this whole year. It's been so great having you all through all these different things that we've done. So I really appreciate you tuning in tonight. Hello, Carol.
Thank you so much, Allison. I wanted to chime in and just thank you for doing this talk tonight. It was great. And it was nice to relive my time there a number of years ago.
Thank you, Carol.
And it was very nice to see Anna on this as well.
Yes,
We traveled together.
That's right, in 2015.
Yeah.
So great. So great. Thank you so much, Carol. It's nice to see you. Hopefully we'll be able to hear some live music in person soon. Soon. All right. Well, if anyone else, you can always write to me at Allison Scola at experiencesicily.com. Otherwise, or call me. I'm always happy to chat. And so I hope I will see you very soon in person. If not here in the New York area, in Sicily, it would be great. So thank you all so much for tuning in, and have a wonderful, wonderful evening, and see you soon.
Thank you,
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao. Buona serata.